Welcome to the Living Life with Wendy podcast. And today I have Cathy Baillargeon joining me. She's a former business consultant and is the owner and chief Cathy Officer of Virtual Cathy, a premier virtual assisting company that has earned distinction in supporting hundreds of small business owners, healthcare practitioners, executive professionals, and nonprofit organizations that span the globe. Cathy's entrepreneurial spirit, profound industry knowledge, and dedication to helping businesses thrive make her a sought-after speaker and thought leader in the field of virtual assistance and business support services. Whether she's sharing her insights on the evolving landscape of remote work, the importance of delegating, or the strategies for building a successful virtual assisting company, Cathy's expertise shines through. She inspires her audiences to achieve new heights of productivity and success in their own endeavors. Please join me in welcoming Cathy to the Living Life with Wendy podcast today. Hey there, friends, and welcome to Living Life with Wendy, the podcast that's all about personal development, mindset, leadership, and business growth, but like in a totally relatable and casual way. I'm Wendy, your host and personal development guru. Well, at least that's what my friends call me. And in each episode, I'll be chatting with experts in the field, sharing my own experiences, and giving you tips and strategies for success that you can actually use in your everyday life. So whether you're looking to improve yourself, climb the corporate ladder, start your own business, or get out of your own way, we've got you covered. So grab a seat, put your feet up, and let's chat about how to live your best life together. First of all, welcome to the Living Life with Wendy podcast, Cathy. I'm so honored to have you join me today and share your story with my listeners as a woman entrepreneur and small business owner and all of the things, right? So I want to start with, why don't you share with my audience more about your business? I did your intro, obviously, but I'd love to hear from you, and I know they would too, more about what you do and how you support others in business.
Yes, absolutely. So Virtual Cathy is a US-based virtual assisting agency. We have VAs all across the US that supports small business owners and nonprofit organizations with their admin and marketing tasks. And so that can kind of just run the gamut. It's kind of more like executive assisting, whether it's like for the business owner or the executive director, all the way to helping with implementation when business owners are working with people that are maybe like on the strategy side, and they don't necessarily have the bandwidth to implement all the things that are being taught or coached to them. And so a lot of times we're the first people they bring onto into their business. And so we love partnering up and being that personable team member for them in their business. So, because business is lonely and it's overwhelmingly lonely, and it's also just with all of the hats, it's overwhelming as well. And we love being that person that person can rely on for the little things that really do add up.
Oh, yeah. And, when you said that business is lonely, especially for small businesses, I'm a solopreneur. I get it. It is extremely lonely when you have to do it all yourself and you don't feel always supported in the things that you do, right? And it's not intentional. It's just part of being a small business sometimes. But I'd love to hear, I think virtual assistants are the thing now, right? And I think a lot of small businesses really get it. But what made you decide to kind of go into that arena yourself?
Great question. So I worked as a consultant, as a business management consultant for a local firm where I reside. And working with these business owners, it was so difficult to get them out of the weeds of their day-to-day, regardless of whether they were startup or well-established 20-year businesses. And some of them even had admin staff, but the business owner was still just overwhelmed. And so just because I was seeing it in my own local business community, I saw a need. I knew virtual assisting was starting to become more mainstream. This was 6 years ago, prior to COVID. I had been thinking about it probably for a good year. And then I was sitting down with some colleagues, an accountant, an IT professional, just these random business owners that we would go to lunch with every so often. And they were moaning about their admin. And I just blurted out, well, that's okay, because I'm going to start a virtual assisting agency and we'll take care of your admin for you. And they like look shocked and they're just, that's a great idea. You need to do that. And so within 30 days, I had my website up, I had my business license, and I hired my first two contractors and then went on to hire employees. And now we have a 20 plus person team
Oh,
in
wow.
my company. Yeah.
Well, and you know what's interesting is it was a thought, right? And a desire that you mentioned. You just kind of
Yeah.
like let it out, and all of a sudden you found that support network just by having lunch. And I think what's special here, Cathy, is that you listened, right? Because how many times have you heard about people having these great ideas? They
Mhm.
share it with others, and others are there to support them, but they don't take action. So, what was
Right.
different for you?
Uh, well, let's see. As to why I took action and actually started this thing, it aligned with what I had been thinking about for a good year, right? And then also seeing first base, working with these business owners in a consulting level, saw, okay, there's a need there. And then hearing it, it was just kind of that last straw. I'm like, okay, it just needs to be done. I also knew that in all of the years that I networked in my local business community, not one had I ever met a virtual assistant. And so saw, okay, if I was going to do this, this is how I was going to do it. I was going to network in person and grow it that way, because if there were any out there locally, I had no idea that they existed. And so that, I think, just that combination was like, okay, it's time to do it. And I'm so glad I did, because I ended up with kind of a dual passion, not only to help support local businesses, not even just local business, but just small businesses in general, but then also loving the ability to create legitimate work from home opportunities for, people who are looking for them, that would really benefit from that in their life. And so uh, that's really just been a driving force these last 6 years, and being able to grow it as I have. So
Yeah,
yeah.
and your timing was perfect, right? Because you
Yeah.
said you did that.
Yeah.
I call it BC,
Yep.
before COVID. And
Yep.
man, has the world changed. And virtual assisting is like huge now, because
Yeah.
there's such a desire for people to work from home because of the
Mhm.
balance it affords them and the flexibility it affords them and all of the things, right? And
Yes.
well, I think a residual benefit is that it also helps our world because we're not all commuting and saves us a ton of time. But tell
Absolutely.
me, you mentioned networking was one of the keys to your success in building your business, networking in person specifically. So does that still ring true today? I mean, now you're a much bigger organization. And yeah, tell me a little bit about that, because I found that really interesting.
Yeah, for the first 2 years, I definitely built our business foundation from in-person networking. And now I have employees that also network on behalf of the company, which is great. And I definitely moved into more of that online marketing for through COVID, when in-person networking really ended for a lot of us for a time. But it is always so beneficial to be a part of your local business community. And I will always have receive just as many, if not more, referrals from people in the local business community, because people want to do business with people they know, right? And you're
Yes.
existing, and you're a little literal human being, versus this, you're a virtual assistant out there that you'll never meet, even if they never meet their virtual assistant, even from my company.
Yeah. I
But
love that,
there's
for those listening, especially small business owners, right? And getting what you said is so important. I'm a true believer of that as well, is like networking within your community, belonging to like your local, um, your local chamber of
chamber.
commerce. That's
Yeah.
really important. And it's so easy to
Yeah.
find the chamber as well. That's one thing that
Mhm.
I'm like, I just moved into a brand new province in Canada here, and that's the first thing I looked up was the chamber.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, because you're right. And I believe that other businesses that are local, they want to support other local businesses. Just like when you're living in even a smaller mid-sized town, as a
Yeah.
consumer, many people make that choice as well.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. So now you said virtual assistant. What
Mhm.
sets you apart from those other virtual assistant companies out there?
And so, what does set us apart is we are U.S. based rather than overseas, and there's something to be said about the ability to communicate with your assistant in your same time zone,
Mhm.
and there isn't any kind of cultural or language barrier. There's really great benefits to VAs that are overseas, but there's also great benefits to working with somebody that is within, in country for yourself. And so, one other thing that really sets us apart is that we really want to work with businesses, regardless of the stage that they're in, to help them grow and scale. And we do a phenomenal job, if I do say so myself, in not just uh, assigning a VA best fit for their, the business owner, but also really going into detail how to delegate to the best of that business owner's ability. And so delegation is definitely a skill set. We call it the subtle arts of delegation. So many business owners, because they're in the capacity that they're in, that might not necessarily come naturally for a lot of people, but they don't realize or understand why working relationships are as hard as it is. And so we really do our best job in teaching our clients how to delegate to the best of their ability.
That's awesome because I would say I coach a lot of clients in delegation as well, like empowering others in their business.
Yeah.
And it is what did you call it? A art?
Subtle art.
The
Yeah. An
subtle
art.
art. Yes, the subtle art of delegation. And it's so true. And it can be so scary for entrepreneurs to give up that control, right? Because usually
Yeah.
that's what holds them back is
Absolutely.
it's about the control thing, and that's exactly what delegation is trusting
Yep.
people enough to like let it go.
Mhm.
So I love that you brought that up. And so now you started your business 6 years ago, and I think that is amazing. Love interviewing other women in business that just took the leap, like left, their paycheck job and just like ventured on their own. Now you've been in business, you said just before COVID. So it's like, what is it, 6 years?
Mhm.
Yeah. So tell me, is there anything that you've learned in the beginning of your business that you'd love to share with my listeners that could really help them avoid the same obstacles?
Absolutely. The one thing that I think, one of the keys to how well we've grown so far is kind of this mindset that I adopted early on, which was a mindset of good enough.
Mm,
When it came to foundational aspects of like really scaling, setting things up for growth, and there are times where things just need to be good enough in order to launch it, talk about it, market it, run with it, right? And there's always going to be time to go back and make tweaks. But if I was waiting for perfection and making sure that everything was exactly where I needed it to be before I launched my business, I would still be working on it and I would never have launched. And so the whole part of good enough has just really been a way for us to really keep moving forward, but still be able to like improve along the way.
mm,
Uh, the next one would probably be, again, just really understanding for myself. Here I am teaching people how to delegate with my virtual assistants. And I remember taking the leap of, okay, here's my email account. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, my clients have to go through this feeling of like, oh my gosh, somebody's now in my email, somebody's seeing everything, and somebody's now in my financial reports. And it's, but it's so necessary for me to delegate all of these things out as, you continue to grow so I can focus on growth and driving this company and doing what's best for the team. And because there's just only so many time, only so many hours in the day. So delegation for myself internally was also a really big component of how well we've grown so far in the last 6 years.
I
Um,
love that. I love, life lessons, the lessons we learn ourselves are sometimes the hardest lessons learned.
yeah,
And
yeah.
going through it ourselves, it makes us better business owners, if you know what I
Mhm,
mean. So I love that you're
mhm.
paying it forward to your clients as well. It sounds like you also learned a lot about yourself and being able to let go of
Oh,
those
yeah,
things.
absolutely.
Yeah, it sounds, and I think that's necessary, don't you think, Cathy, to scale, right? To the size that
Mhm.
you are now, because you'll drive yourself absolutely crazy if you try to hang on to it all.
It's true.
Yeah,
It's true. And I don't want to, right? That there's stuff that I have no desire to be a part of. And there's so many things that somebody else is so much better at than I am. And so it's definitely humbling to surround yourself with people that are smarter than you in certain areas or do a better job than you after doing it for so long yourself. But I think business owners, we can eat some humble pie every. It's probably good for us to eat some humble
absolutely.
pie.
Well, personal growth, right? Those obstacles
Yeah.
absolutely stretch us and they help us
Mhm.
grow. I think you said something really important as well is like taking action even when you don't think you're ready, right? Good enough is
Yes.
good enough. And
Hmm.
as a personal development coach, I have so many people who are building like either online courses or building their own businesses, and they stop themselves there. And
Hmm.
I don't know how you feel about it. I think part of it is fear, right? The fear of
Yes.
failure. So, oh, it has to be perfect before I launch. And I think part of it is just, I don't think there's such things as perfection. I think that's a story we tell ourselves. Perfection will
Mm.
make it better. So, can you give us an example where you just said, okay, like, because real life examples, I think people connect with those, right? Where you just said,
Yeah.
all right, this has got to be good enough and I'm just going to move. So, can you give
Hmm.
us a real life example?
Yeah, I'd say that when we made the decision to go from the project management system that we had to having everything on our website. So, like, for example, we did away with sending out proposals, sending out contracts, because we were growing to a point where it was such a bottleneck. Um, so we moved everything to where people can purchase our services directly from our website, and there's a terms and conditions that serve as our contract. And it was a big move, but I knew that, and we did it pretty early on, but I knew that it was essential in order for us to scale, even if it felt like we weren't necessarily ready for that. And at the time, everybody was like, okay, send me over a proposal, send me over a contract. And to have to, like, actually, you can just go on our website and purchase the plan that you want immediately from our website. And while there was, I guess I always assumed that there would be some kind of pushback, like, well, I want to work with somebody who gives me a proposal kind of thing. It was never the case. And it was always stories that I told myself that it would be a problem, and it never was. And it streamlined it not only for us on the internal side, but it streamlined it for the client as well. They don't have to sit down and they don't have to go through the proposal, and they see everything that's an option, and they can go through the contract at their convenience. It's like that was a big scaling move on our part that I was pretty nervous about.
Yeah,
And
because
yeah,
digitizing's scary sometimes, right?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
I think we still have
yeah,
this like a little bit of distrust with it with technology because we've experienced on our own end
yeah,
some of the glitches that come along with it.
exactly.
For sure.
Yeah.
Okay, scaling. You mentioned scaling a couple of times. So I'd love to for you to share. Here's a big thing. As an
Hmm.
entrepreneur, when do you know it's time to start hiring?
Ooh, that's a great one. When you start thinking about it, you're probably almost too late, right? Some at times, right? But if you are, I always think the person is going home, the business owner's coming home. They might have been spending the whole day doing what they do best. And then they go home and they have 3 more hours worth of admin work that they need to do in front of the computer. And they sit down in front of the computer and they're looking at their email and they're just thinking to themselves, I shouldn't be doing this.
Mm,
That is when you need to be hiring somebody to help serve you in your business. When you start thinking along whether it's your email, whether it's, boxing up or shipping or whatever that thing in your business where you're just like, man, I don't really want to be doing this. That is when you should be considering who do I need to bring into my business and what should they be doing in order to take me out of this process in my business. Um, if it's always tough because as small business owners, especially as solopreneurs, we are constantly thinking about revenue. We're constantly thinking about, is this an expense or is this an investment, right? And it's so difficult to, when bringing somebody into your company in whatever capacity, it's hard to not see that as an expense rather than to not see that as an investment rather than an expense. I might have said that backwards. Um, because we're just seeing dollars out, but what we need to be doing is thinking about, okay, how many clients do I need to land or customers do I need to have buy in order to pay for this position? If this person is going to be freeing up 10, 15 hours, even just a month or maybe even a week, what can I do with that 10 and 15 hours to bring in more sales? And so when you start thinking about that way, that's it really lessens that scary part of, oh my gosh, I'm bringing in this person and I'm responsible for paying them now.
mhm, absolutely. And I love how you frame that. It's not about how much do I have to sell, or how much do I have to generate to pay this person? What is the cost if I don't free that time up for myself as a leader in
Yeah,
your business? Because our jobs as leaders are to be in that strategic mindset and building and looking for those opportunities. And they will come when we give ourselves time.
right. And
Love
we
that.
may be feeling like we are hiring too early, or maybe it's I can't remember what that, like, it's just like this natural, I don't know, attrition. But when you hire somebody and you open up this new capacity in your business, for whatever reason, it just seems like it naturally fills that capacity. You will naturally get more business because you are more, present in your community, or you're doing more marketing, focusing on more marketing at the time, or, coming up with the next great service that you're going to be offering because you didn't have the headspace to do it before because you're
Mhm.
busy, stuffing boxes or whatever. So,
Right. And I think you said something, you didn't quite call it the yuck. I call it the yuck. So when you find yourself doing things that actually you do not enjoy, spending time in
yeah.
the yuck in your business, like for me, it's admin for sure. I'd rather be
Hmm.
coaching, doing workshops, doing my podcast, all the fun things that really inspire me to show up every day for my clients,
Yes.
for my audience. And when you start to feel like, ugh, I hate doing this, maybe that's a
Hmm.
flag, right?
Yeah.
Maybe
Yep.
it's time. I love that you said
Yeah.
that. And I hear that so many times that people will, you know, they just don't see it for themselves, right?
Yeah.
Because they're in
Yeah.
it. And you said something really important there, that when you're in the busy and you don't have the time and space to really give yourself that time to strategize and spend time working on your business rather than in your
Yes.
business, that's
Yes.
when you get in deep.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. That's why when people go to business conferences and they come back with all a slew of ideas, it's because they actually took a moment away from their email,
Mm-hmm.
responding to emails and all the like, and they actually had a moment to think about their business,
Yeah.
think about what the next thing they're going to do. Yeah.
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 Space is important. And you're right. Space is like time we give ourselves. Franklin Covey says it really well when he says sharpen the saw. And that's really what we
Mm,
need to do as not
yes.
only business owners, but professionals too. And that's where you open up that bandwidth to really like just lean into your superpowers, right?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love that. Love that. Okay. So, you know, we have no age judgment on this podcast, that's for sure. But if you could go back in time, I'm going to put you in a time machine
Oh
and
gosh.
ask you, what would you tell your early 20-year-old self now that you have lived the life that you've lived as a woman in business and a woman in the work world?
Stop telling yourself certain stories. I remember, and it was so funny. Like I remember telling myself all my life, I want to find a good job, a good company. I want to work for that company for 25 years, retire from that company, like my dad did, right? Like, this is kind of what the previous generation had done before. And I always told myself I was a good employee. I was a good employee. And I remember uh, never having a desire to start my business. And even when I did start my business, I still felt like there wasn't that desire to like I never saw myself as a business owner. And so uh, I really feel like I probably sold myself a little short because I just attached myself to the story. I told myself, when I was a kid, like I'm gonna find that company. I'm gonna work until I retire. And uh, I think that if I hadn't continuously told myself that, perhaps entrepreneurship would have sparked an interest earlier.
Mm,
And perhaps I needed to go through what I needed to go through in order to even get to where I was okay with jumping ship and starting my own thing. But I think all business owners, we all tell ourselves, like, I wish I had started earlier, right? I wish I had started when I had
absolutely.
first initially thought of the idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, and I don't think it's gender specific. We tell ourselves those stories that either it's going to be too hard or we're not
Mm.
ready or it's a risk, right? The risk
Yeah.
of being an
Yeah.
entrepreneur is real, but when you can pour the same amount of energy and dedication into whatever you choose to do with your career, that's when it really starts to really pay off and pay back, right? Whether you're
Yes.
going for that CEO or that executive position in a corporation. And for those women out there, I want you to listen really, really carefully to this. It's not about holding yourself back. It's about leaning in and taking that chance. And like you said, don't wait until you feel you're ready. And it doesn't matter if you're
Yes.
starting your own business or changing things in your business or applying for that bigger role. As women, we hold ourselves back. It's just natural. And I've interviewed so many people that say that same thing. So I love
Yes.
having people like you on my podcast that just didn't listen to those voices and just like,
Yep.
instead listen to the voices of people going, yeah, I think that would be a good idea. I could use your service. And you just went,
Yeah.
okay, let's go.
Okay, exactly. Well, and I also think when people think business, they think something so permanent too, like, oh man, well, if I get into business, that's it. I'm going to be stuck kind of thing. And it's like nothing is ever set in stone, especially in business. And it shouldn't be, right? We should always be evolving and growing with our business and changing things up and trying new things. And so not being afraid of change and just knowing that, okay, if 6 months down the road you start your business, you don't like the name, you can change it. If you get a year in and you're like, you know what, this is not my bag, but I did find this niche that I really enjoy doing, do that. Like
Yeah,
there's nothing, especially when you're doing your own thing, you have your own business, you call all the shots. You can change whatever you want in it.
exactly. Like you can even decide to do other things in complement to your business. And really important that you said what you said about changing the name of your business. It goes for
Mhm.
logos, it goes for all the things. There are so many
Yes.
people who are in the entrepreneur space and they're like, well, I have to finalize my logo. And I'm like, why? I've changed my logo twice since 2020.
Exactly.
It's only been 4 years. I
Yes.
I originally did not have the name of my business as Resolve Coaching and Consulting. It was called Living Life with Wendy, which now is my podcast name, right? So it's still got
Yep.
legs.
Yes.
And I know that you shared with me before we jumped onto this podcast that you
Yeah.
weren't originally, this was not your original business name
That's
either.
right. That's right.
Wow.
Yeah. I changed it within 6 months. I'm like, you know what? This makes more sense. And I mean, the- if we're going to be doing this, if we're going to be taking the risk and we're going to be, you know, growing professionally, personally, all of this, we might as well have fun with it too. And so if
Mm,
you don't like something about your business, change it. This should bring you some, while it's going to bring you some stress, obviously, and overwhelm at times, and uh, it might as well bring you joy and fun as well. Have
yeah,
fun with it. Have fun with your business. I love
I
having
love
fun
it.
with my business.
Well,
Yeah.
and that's what's great is like, and when it's not fun anymore, it doesn't mean you have to leave it, right? It means you got to find the
Right.
joy again.
Just, yeah, do a little revamp, figure it out. Yeah.
And so, as an entrepreneur, what are some of the habits that you feel? Because I talk a lot about habit and routine. And so, tell me, what are some of the habits and routines that you feel have really contributed to your success?
Ooh, that's a great question. One of the things that I would always recommend is figure out what kind of, I don't know if it's like a circadian rhythm or find out what kind of rhythm works best for you. Uh, I work better in the evening, and I for whatever reason, that's just when I'm most creative. And so for a while, I really tried to shove myself into the whole like, okay, I need to be creative and I need to do all of these things at 9 a.m. in the morning, when I do way better doing that at 6, 7 o'clock at night. And when I finally let go of this like expectation of myself, like, okay, well, I need to be working, during regular business hours, or doing certain things during regular business hours. That's really when things took off and did better for sure. I also believe in making sure that business, like just the business world and even like in the professional world, sometimes it just completely overtakes our whole entire life, right? It
Mm,
is everything to us. And so I've found that I'm in a much healthier mindset for my team, my management team, my team of VAs, and myself, really trying to incorporate daily exercise in. And it's just so important to like, there are so many successful people out there that work out every day, that prioritize their health, and like, well, why can't I? Why can't I
mhm.
also have a successful business as well as a successful, healthy lifestyle? So that was a big one. A couple of years ago, I really got into that, and that's really changed a lot of how I ran my company and managed people, and a much better, happier person now. So,
I love that. So you said something really important because, yes, I agree. Finding your rhythm and what's unique to you is super
yeah.
important. Right. I want to reiterate that because there's so much out there on the internet about, the 5 a.m. club or doing everything first thing
Mhm.
in the morning. But hey, listen, if you're a night owl and that's your productive time, you
Yes,
can't you can't force yourself. And
exactly.
it's about being really honest with yourself and saying, you know what, that does not work for me, but what will work for me?
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Love
Yep.
that. Love that. And that's an important message to give to everybody out there because what you see out there in social media isn't a one size fits all. And if anybody tells you it is, I think they're really they're really feeding you a bunch of BS. But you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you can try different kind of like time management things, but it doesn't necessarily have to be first thing in the morning, like the Pomodoro method or whatever. But figure out first, when are you most productive?
Yeah.
And is that consistent? And does that work for you and, your family, and work around that? Yeah.
You mentioned you had kids. So share with us, like, how do you find that balance? Because you did mention balance as well. That did not go unnoticed. And finding that balance when you're working can be a tricky and slippery slope, especially when you have kids and you're a working entrepreneur, a woman in entrepreneurship. So tell us how you balance it all.
I will be completely honest, and I started my business when my kids were older. So they were certainly more independent, I should say. But you do get to a point where, you're working 80 hours a week and they are affected by that regardless of the age. And
Mhm.
so there's always ways where you can figure out whatever kind of balance your family needs. Maybe it's you really enjoy cooking. That is not me, but if you really enjoy cooking, so even if you're working in the evening, you take an hour and a half out of that evening time and you cook with your kids. Or you incorporate your kids in your business. That's one thing that I did. So my kids do little odds and end things, and they are involved, and so they feel like they're also contributing to the success of this business in their own way. And so that's one way. But balance is always so tricky because it doesn't look the same to everybody, and it's one person's balance may just look completely askew to another person. And so this is also another thing that you had mentioned, like this is one area in your life where you really cannot look to social media to figure out what that balance should look like for you. And it's really on you to figure that out. What's going to work for
Yeah.
your family? What's going to work
Yeah.
for your dogs or your cats? Or cats will be
Absolutely.
fine.
Yeah, the cats will be fine.
The
But
cats
I,
will be
I
fine.
do, I do appreciate you sharing that. And it is very insightful that balance looks different for everyone.
Yeah.
But there is an element where, you have to take inventory of the time that you're spending in your business and what are you losing out on? And,
Right.
because there's going to be a time when the business isn't going to be as important. And I mean,
Right.
like when you either sell your business or you pass it on or you retire eventually, or you slow down. Right. So I think that I try to be in a future mindset of going, okay, so if I'm feeling like I'm risking a specific relationship or something that I love to do, then I need to
Yeah.
do inventory.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that
So,
might be the basis to look into more delegation. If you
ah,
really aren't able to take the time off that you really need, then start looking at the tasks that you can hand off to somebody else so then you can free up that time for balance.
yeah, great full circle moment because now we're coming back to your business again. And so I'd love to hear your insights on what do you feel are the future trends? What are we to look forward to in the virtual assistant space? And,
Mm.
we've already talked about why it's important to have that delegation and maybe hire a virtual assistant so that you
Mhm.
can open up that space. But what do you see the industry trends? Where do you see them going?
I think where I see them going is, everybody's kind of going hog wild about AI, and there are some industries where they're terrified that their things are going to get replaced by AI. They're going to get replaced by AI. I don't necessarily see AI replacing the human element of virtual assisting anytime soon. But what I see, or at least I hope to see in my industry, is for virtual assistants to start utilizing AI to become more efficient for their clients,
Mm.
which might look like us being able to do, 1.5, 2 times more work for that person for the same amount of money. Like, so it's kind of like, or with the same amount of time that they would normally have to complete tasks. So I'm hoping that with AI, I don't, I see that becoming such a good tool for virtual assistants to use to really up their game and be even more valuable to business owners, nonprofit organizations, and whoever it is they're serving.
Yeah, absolute. I agree with you. It's a time saver for sure, and I
Yeah.
believe what you said. And I think there's a real element here is that when it's coming from a service industry, so virtual
Yes.
assistance is a service industry.
Yes.
What you do specifically, what I do specifically is a service industry. You cannot replace the human element. You need that
That's right.
interaction because
Yes.
there's checks and balances that have to happen in that, whether it be a virtual face-to-face like we're doing today or in-person face-to-face that you cannot replace with AI.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm also hearing you say, so let go of that fear that you're going to be replaced and lean in to the tool.
Really do. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think so. There's always, when you have a tool, you need somebody to use it. And that doesn't necessarily mean that all these business owners have to become AI experts overnight either. So there's always options. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So love that you mentioned that because it is a hot topic. AI is definitely a hot
Mhm.
topic. We also talked about balance, right? And how it's important. I know you go to the gym, but what else do you do in your free time to like enjoy life outside of your business? I'd love to hear that.
Let's see here. Well, kind of boring, I'll be honest. I do a lot of reading. I live on a hobby farm, so there's, different times of the years where we're producing fruit. My husband also has a business. He has a dog boarding business. So our life is just full of dog hair and pine needles and and I'm actually hoping that this is going to be kind of the first thing that I want to try and create that's not really business related, but in the next month, I'm hoping to launch a just like a personal podcast. So I've been
Mm.
working on that behind the scenes for a couple months now, and other than that, everything is still just all business for me. So
But I love it. Hey, fellow podcaster, I can't wait to hear more about that for sure. It's a fun activity and I do that. I do it for the same thing, right?
yeah,
It really has very little to do with my business. It's really about, and I shared that with you even before we jumped on. It's about a passion project, right? To sort of pave the
yeah,
road for other women in business, women entrepreneurs, women professionals, and really talk about, from a woman's perspective, sort of the things that we face and
yeah,
obstacles we overcome. And there's so many things that are so common across the gender platform that it's not about being a woman or a man, but it's just about being a human. And I love that because I think we talked a lot about those struggles that I
yeah.
hear right across the board today.
Hmm.
And I thank you for that. I really do. Thank you for that, Cathy. And I think what I really love today is like your chill demeanor. It was such a good balance for me because I come in hot, right? And I can appreciate why people love working with you because I am sure that you give them an enormous sense of calm when you're sharing
Yeah.
your yeah, yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. And I know there's like so many platforms that you shared in your bio that I can share with my listeners. So I'll be sure to share your website, your Facebook, your Instagram, your LinkedIn. You have a TikTok channel as well and a YouTube channel. Like it doesn't end. So we'll make sure that we include all of those links in the show notes because I think it's
Thank
important
you so much.
to know where people can find you. And you've mentioned that you're based in the States, but I have a feeling because you're on the West Coast, you're in Washington State. And I have a
Right.
feeling that my fellow Canadians can reach out to you too. Am I correct in that?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. We work in a handful of different other countries too. So,
Yeah.
and delightfully, we have people that are in same time zone. So that's great. So,
Yeah. Thank you so much that you joined
yeah,
me today, Cathy. You brought in such a great perspective on delegation, about habits and routines, about doing the thing even when you're not ready or it's not perfect. I love all of the things, and I'm sure I've missed other elements, but I believe that my listeners will get such an enormous amount of value out of this podcast. So again, I want to thank you. You've been a fantastic guest on today's podcast.
thank you so much. I really appreciate you allowing me to be here.
Hey, friends, be sure to subscribe to the Living Life with Wendy podcast, and you can also follow me on my other social platforms. I can be found on the World Wide Web at www.wendybowman.com, on Instagram as Coach Wendy Bowman, on Facebook at Resolve Coaching and Consulting, and finally on YouTube as Wendy Easton Bowman. I want to thank you again for joining me on Living Life with Wendy. Now go out there and live your best life.